Jennifer, I've been to a couple of those American bases, both in Japan and South Korea. When President Trump was on the election trail, on his campaign trail, he actually talked about wanting his Asian allies to shoulder more of the burden of having American troops there. How much of this issue was discussed during this trip, and how successful was he in portraying some sort of support from the U.S. towards his allies?
You know, this was a trip for the president to, begin to show Asia who he is and kind of rally himself around this idea of demanding better deal for Americans, whether it has to do with military aid, that Asian countries that have for a long time benefited from U.S. presence contribute more, or on trade. In Japan, he talked a lot about the trade deficit and trying to get the U.S. onto better footing. I think we'll hear that again from him certainly in Korea, which is where he's headed in a few hours, and then in China in a few days.
So what's the verdict on Japan, Jennifer, before we move on to Korea and China, the big kahuna, as it were? Did the president succeed in his mission in Japan?
You know, it doesn't sound like there were any clear takeaways on trade or on national security that the administration has announced thus far. A lot of what the president did with Prime Minister Abe was more along the lines of relationship building, which is also what they did when the Prime Minister was in the U.S. They played 9 holes of golf. You saw them feeding koi fish. There were a lot of things that seemed to be more about kind of showing that their relationship is good, as opposed to actually delivering on something by the president for the U.S.